Tonight on Talking Points, the auto workers' strike enters its 4th day. Could a deal be reached soon? Where things stand right now.
Plus, Congress returns for a very busy month. The latest on the looming government shutdown and more.
And the latest on the Biden impeachment inquiry. Could it impact Kevin McCarthy's speakership? These stories and much more. Talking Points starts right now. And we thank you for joining us at 7:30 for Talking Points. I'm Chilekasi, Adele.
And I'm Jake Morel. The agreed upon deal between Washington and Tehran ended a years-long nightmare today. Iran released 7 Americans in its custody. This comes weeks after the U.S. agreed to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian funds.
This is video of the detainees en route to the U.S. after stopping in Qatar earlier today. The United States had imposed sanctions on Iran for its detention of the Americans. The release brings the years-long worry to an end ahead of the United Nations General Assembly. The United Automobile Workers strike is continuing for its 4th day. General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis making a push to reach a deal today. Let's bring in Talking Points Erica Love, who has been monitoring today's updates. Erica, let's talk about what happened today. Ballpark here. 48 hours, a week, 24 hours. What's the likelihood of the workers and the automakers reaching a deal here?
Well, Chile, there really is no ballpark, right? There's not even a stadium to shrink this all down. It's hard to really tell what this is going to turn out to be, because the truth of the matter is there are a lot of things that the United Auto Workers are asking for. Let's take a look at what the actual demands are from the auto workers. One of the things is they're asking for a bigger share of profits. They're asking for shorter work weeks, and workers are hoping for defined benefits and pensions, and employees want overall stronger job security given this new shift towards electrical vehicles. The hard part about that is a lot of the big companies don't want to go higher than 20% increases in a wage, while the workers are asking for up to 40% increases in wages.
And Erica, President Biden and Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman are supporting the worker side of the strike. Fetterman driving 5 hours from Pittsburgh to protest with union strikers. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said it's too premature to forecast the strike's impact on the economy. Erica, what are the political implications of this? You know, this is Michigan, a swing state we're talking about here.
Well, it's very difficult to say because, like you said, this is a swing state, and majority of the protests are happening in Detroit. But President Biden is also trying to support the climate agenda and helping areas in northern Michigan move towards cleaner air and moving towards a new generation of supporting our environment in different ways through law. And so what is President Biden going to do? It's really hard to tell at this point, because you have President Trump coming out and saying that the move towards electrical vehicles is a job killer. Well, that might just be the one thing that pushes moderate Democrats to move more towards Trump's side this time next year.
And this is such a interesting issue to kind of thread the needle on. You have so many different political views, so many different places. You have a city in Detroit, its suburbs still rebuilding from 2008, and the auto collapse is there. On the flip side, President Biden being blamed for protecting unions. Why is that?
Well, you know, President Biden has branded himself as the pro-union president from the beginning. He said that when he was here in Syracuse. He loves unions, but we don't really know where he's going with this because, like he said, he also spent $369 billion in electrical spending for electrical vehicles. So where is this going to go in the next few years is really hard to tell. He's stuck in a position where he doesn't know which side to go, climate route, attract younger voters, or stick strong behind these pro-union Democrats. And we're talking about 13,000 people on strike right now. So that can be just enough to push the entire vote to a completely different side this time next year in Michigan.
Erica Love, thank you. New this week, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was acquitted of all charges in his impeachment trial. Paxton, who was suspended, is now allowed to return to his position. He was accused of illegally using his post to benefit a real estate developer and then was accused of firing employees who reported him to authorities. All but 2 of 18 state Senate Republicans voted to acquit Paxton on Saturday. A 2/3 state Senate majority would have been needed to remove him from his position. Paxton was impeached by the Texas State House in May.
Let's reset here. It's going to be a busy month for Congress. New details on the looming government shutdown, a multi-pronged monster. We'll break down all those different branches next.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those...
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
Hey, welcome back. You're watching Talking Points. New tonight, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is expected to throw his hat into the ring for the state's 2026 gubernatorial race. NBC News reporting says Matt Gaetz' name has been floated in recent days as the Republicans' replacement for current Governor Ron DeSantis in the next election. DeSantis is currently in the first year of his second term in office. Gaetz, who is one of the prominent far-right Republicans in Congress, has publicly clashed with top Republicans as of recently. Gaetz also had a falling out with DeSantis and is currently supporting former President Donald Trump for the Republican nomination in next year's presidential election.
And Congress returned to D.C. last week and the GOP got to work. Speaker McCarthy directed Republican-led committees to launch an impeachment inquiry into President Biden to investigate his involvement in his son's business dealings. But not all of the party was on board. One Senate Republican told The Hill that, quote, "It's a waste of time. It's a fool's errand." Talking Points analyst Ronnie Perillo joins us now to give us the latest on the impeachment conversation.
Thanks, Jake. Well, it was somewhat of a surprise when Speaker McCarthy unveiled this all last Tuesday. The Speaker formally said an investigation would only be opened if it were to be voted on in the House. But that's not what happened here. McCarthy directed top House Republicans to open such an investigation. It appears to be a move to appease more conservative House Republicans, who McCarthy had trouble garnering support from during his historically long run for Speaker back in January. You might remember those names, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and Colorado's Lauren Boebert. They, of course, are in favor of this impeachment inquiry and have been for quite some time. Speaker McCarthy saying in a news conference last week, there are credible allegations against the president.
Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption.
Now, the House Oversight Committee says President Biden was involved with his son Hunter's overseas business dealings during his time as vice president. They say Biden used his political power to help make deals for his son. That includes a $20 million payment from a foreign source to the Biden family. Republicans now want to see those bank records. They say they're a key part in this inquiry. They're also relying heavily on testimony from Devon Archer, a former business partner of the president's son, who says Hunter used his father's name repeatedly in phone conversations to advance business deals. House Democrats, of course, say none of the money went to the president and that McCarthy's claims are just cheap political points.
There is no facts in the record to suggest that President Biden engaged in wrongdoing. There are no facts on the record to suggest that President Biden engaged in impeachable offenses. There are no facts on the record to suggest that President Biden broke the law in any way, shape, or form.
Now, the big question here, how likely is this all to materialize? Well, Republicans would need to have a majority to send the probe to the House floor. Right now, it's unclear if it will get there, so it's definitely something to monitor, but too early to determine if there are any legs to this inquiry. Guys?
Ronnie Perillo, thank you. It's safe to say that Congress has their hands full this month. They look to avoid an expensive government shutdown, approve the Federal Aviation Administration, and approve aid to Ukraine.
Hey, let's put some numbers into perspective here. Congress has exactly 12 days to approve the FAA and agree to a government funding bill. Plus, they have 3 days from now to prepare for Ukrainian President Zelensky's address to Congress. Let's bring in our panel, Talking Points analyst Gus Madero, Andrea Rose Oates. Andy, let's start with you. September 30th. Looks like that's going to be the day the government runs out of money. I feel like with these government shutdowns, we get into this point where maybe the first 2 weeks this thing is looming and it's like nobody's really talking about it, and then everybody's hair comes on fire. We're nearing that stage, it almost feels like. But what is holding things up here?
Well, Chile, the U.S. government, like you mentioned, is definitely having a very busy September, and a government shutdown might happen a lot sooner than we might think. So government funding is expected to run out by September 30th, and honestly, possibly even sooner. So during these next 11 days, lawmakers are doing their due diligence to come up with some type of proposal to allocate for more government funding, also known as a continuing resolution. And if they fail to find a resolution for government funding, then the government will ultimately have to shut down. But with a government shutdown, I don't believe that lawmakers are thinking about all the parameters, such as essential services and goods not being provided to the general public, but also the fact that federal workers need the U.S. government to give them a lot of instruction, especially when it comes to their occupation. So all lawmakers are definitely having all eyes on them, especially in this moment, to determine whether or not they will make not only the right decision, but a decision that respects the views and what the American people believes in during this time.
And a lot of people, I think, we have this conversation every few years when we get a scenario like this, and not enough people really realize the implications. The federal government, I think people forget how much of a large employer it is. Can you talk again about some of those implications of the shutdown?
Yes, well, a government shutdown, most importantly, is very, very expensive. And I kind of find it almost contradicting in a sense the fact that government lawmakers really want to take this time to find more government funding, when in reality, we're losing even more of it if a government shutdown were to occur. And the fact that a lot of essential goods and services, especially post-pandemic, that are being given to different American families, they won't be able to necessarily depend on that with a government shutdown. So I think we really need to think about these causes and more when we talk about such big issues as a government shutdown and not finding necessarily other solutions before then.
Now, speaking of spending, let's shift to other issues that Congress is facing right now and bring you in, Gustavo. President Zelensky of Ukraine arriving in the United States today in New York City to visit Ukrainian soldiers in hospitals in New York City. He will visit Congress in this visit. Tell us about the aid that he's seeking and what you foresee happening.
Well, Jake, the aid he is seeking right now, Congress is actually weighing whether they're going to approve Joe Biden's $24 billion request to send humanitarian and military aid to Ukraine, right? But if you take a look at it, this is controversial in and of itself, given that the U.S. has already spent $50 billion on this war with Ukraine. But if you take a look and ask what the American people have to think about this, well, in a recent poll conducted by CBS, they found that actually 54% of Americans are willing to keep funding this war and helping Ukraine get rid of the Russian invasion. But if you take a look at GOP voters and specifically, well, it's 61% of them that are strongly opposed on giving Ukraine this money. So I think right now that Zelensky is coming, it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to get that Republican support. That is what he needs in order to continue fighting this war, because without a doubt, we know they're not going to make it much farther if they don't.
Now, let's talk about the GOP here for a second. Speaker McCarthy making a case for toughest first year as Speaker. He had the debt ceiling bill with Biden. He had a tough time getting the speakership, and now he's facing pressure from the right wing of the party to impeach Biden, and he's also facing judgment from the other wing of the party not to impeach him. Tell us about what Kevin McCarthy is facing here in the coming months.
I mean, like you said, Kevin McCarthy hasn't had it easy. But right now, it's not getting any simpler for him. On the contrary, I would say this is one of the most toughest moments in his career. And I attribute that to trying to lead such a divided and polarized Republican Party, right? Because given that both sides of his party are so polar opposites, well, it's kind of hard for McCarthy to kind of find a space in the middle. And especially having the House Freedom Caucus against him, regardless of him trying to appease them with the impeachment inquiry for Biden, they don't agree with his government, the short-term government funding plan, and they're oh my God, sorry. They're trying to get a government shutdown. So I think the way McCarthy is going to deal with this is going to be, well, he's definitely under a lot of stress, and it's going to be very interesting to see how he's able to get this going in the next couple of days.
So much going on that will make your head spin, right?
Yeah,
Gus.
completely.
Andy, thank you so much. I think it's safe to say this month will be the hardest of Kevin McCarthy's tenure as Speaker. Remember, McCarthy had to please the far-right side of his party to win the speakership in January. Now that same far-right corner giving the California rep a tough time yet again with the government shutdown and the Biden impeachment inquiry. Take a listen.
I'm concerned for the Speaker that he seems to be a little rattled and unhinged in a time when we need focus and strong effort. Whether or not McCarthy faces a motion to vacate is within his own hands. All he has to do is come into compliance with the deal we made in January.
Seems to be heated indeed. Now it's the second week that Congress is back on the Hill, and the divide within the GOP seems to be growing. In new reporting from CNN last week, McCarthy appears to be in a tough spot. He might not have the votes to formally open an impeachment probe into President Biden. And now the question has risen whether McCarthy could be unseated as Speaker. I want to bring in Talking Points analyst Luke Welch, who's been following McCarthy's rough return to Congress from the summer recess. Luke, you know, I think one thing to talk about here, survival. There's a lot going on here with all these different flanks of the Republican Party. How are Republicans reacting to McCarthy's performance?
Well, there have been a variety of responses from across the GOP, with far-right leader Matt Gaetz, as you mentioned earlier, saying that McCarthy is not adequately fulfilling the conservative agenda by not focusing on creating single-issue spending bills. And then we have the more moderate side saying that he is wasting time entertaining the attempts to impeach President Biden. So he's in a sticky situation, no matter how you look at it, trying to please both sides of the party while avoiding losing his speakership.
You know, it looks at this point in time like McCarthy is almost battle-tested. Multiple scenarios of what could happen in place. But we saw what happened when it took so long for him to become Speaker back at the beginning of the year. Again, a lot of things going on over the past few months. We're on month 9 now. How fearful should he be of a potential removal? Is this something we should look into a lot, or is this something that just seems like a little bit of a threat?
Well, it's up in the air, and according to House rules that were passed just early this year, it would take one member of the House of Representatives to pursue a motion to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, and only a majority vote to succeed it. Now, if we think back to earlier this year, 20 Republican House members voted against Kevin McCarthy for the Speaker of the House, and depending on how the last 8 months went, I think it would be safe to say that this number would increase. And he could easily upset either side of his party by trying to work across the aisle and avoid the government shutdown, or just please the Freedom Caucus and endure the shutdown altogether. So I definitely would say the question is up in the air, and it's not answered yet whether or not Kevin McCarthy will be in trouble for his speakership.
Indeed, things are getting hot. Luke Welch, thank you. Next on Talking Points, former President Donald Trump had a lot to say about his mounting legal battles. If you didn't watch it, don't worry, we've got you covered. The most important quotes next.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back. Hope you're enjoying your Monday evening. Former President Donald Trump sat down with Kristen Welker for her first show as moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. The Republican frontrunner pushed back hard on the 91 criminal charges against him. But is he worried about the prospect of going to prison? Here's Talking Points analyst Luke Radel.
President Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
The defiant former president facing 4 felony indictments as his top GOP rivals call into question whether a convicted criminal can win the White House.
I think the chance of getting elected president after being convicted of a felony is as close to zero as you can get.
Despite his mounting legal perils, Trump says he's not worried at all.
When you go to bed at night, do you worry about going to jail?
No, I don't really. I don't even think about it. I'm built a little differently, I guess, because I have had people come up to me and say, "How do you do it, sir? How do you do it?"
And in the latest of a series of high-profile interviews, the former president appears to be making his legal team's arguments in the court of public opinion. First, on January 6th.
Did you call military or law enforcement?
What?
Did you call military or law enforcement at the moment the Capitol was under attack?
I'm not going to tell you anything. Let me put it this way. I behaved so well. I did such a good job.
On the now infamous phone call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
If it was bad, why didn't they say, "Sir, that was very inappropriate of you to say"?
And on the Mar-a-Lago documents case where he says he'll testify in his own defense.
A new charge suggests you asked a staffer to delete security camera footage so it wouldn't get into the hands of investigators. Did you do that? It's false.
But let me tell you what
Would you
else.
testify to that under oath?
I'll testify.
You testify to that under oath?
It's a fake charge by this deranged lunatic prosecutor.
That prosecutor is special counsel Jack Smith, who was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland to oversee the Trump cases. Smith is asking a federal judge to put a limited gag order on the former president, following a torrent of attacks against those involved in his ongoing criminal trials. Jake and Chile, one of the comments cited in that filing by Jack Smith was this one from the former president's social media app, Truth Social. On August 4th, the former president wrote, quote, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you," in all caps. Prosecutors say messages like those are inflammatory and intimidating. Guys, it's important to note that amidst all of this legal turmoil, or maybe even because of it, Trump is the far and away frontrunner for the GOP nomination in 2024. Guys, back to you.
Interesting times, Luke. Thank you. Last week, Hunter Biden was indicted on 3 felony firearms charges. The president's son was charged on 2 counts relating to alleged false statements he made while purchasing a firearm. The third is for allegedly obtaining a firearm illegally. The indictment comes after a plea deal with prosecutors fell apart over the summer, and the timing of this indictment could call for a high-stakes trial around the time of the 2024 election. Let's bring in Talking Points analyst Olivia Maniscalco. Now, Olivia, I just want to start with what is Hunter Biden's camp saying?
Well, actually, his attorney is saying that he does not even think this case will make it to trial. And this is for a multitude of reasons. Actually, the legal proceedings with the legal prosecution that this case is involved under is actually under constitutional challenge because gun activists are arguing that the Second Amendment does not say that drug users cannot own a gun. Other than that, it is actually pretty unlikely that anybody does get indicted for filling out the wrong thing on the form to purchase a firearm. Actually, less than 300 in America this past year. But his other charge, which is illegally owning a firearm, that is more likely, although it is usually attached to more charges than just the other 2 that this one is attached to. There's also the chance that a plea deal could still happen. So as of now, it is unlikely that he faces serious jail time.
And Olivia, President's son being indicted is unprecedented. How is this affecting Biden himself?
Well, actually, this combined with the impeachment probe opened under President Biden, it was a tough week for him. Lots of press, but not good press. It's overshadowing other things going on. And actually, if you look at his polling numbers, they have not changed much, not very significantly. His approval rating is somewhat the same. But if this does go to trial and this does begin, and Hunter Biden does go behind bars for a long time, this could mean something bad for the president.
Olivia, thank you. Democratic voters seem to be shifting their views on Vice President Harris. We'll break it down after the break.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse,
Yes.
you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Here's to the straggly ones, the lopsided ones, the first ones, the I miss my beard ones. But hey, I look good with this ones. But no way he's grown that in a week ones. The black, brown, red, and gray ones. That one. The itchy ones. The never forgotten ones. The ones grown by Dad. The ones grown for Dad. The started late ones. The absolutely filthy ones. The drawn on ones. The finger ones. The pin ones. The I nearly didn't do it this year ones. And the yeah, why not ones. They all raise awareness, raise funds, start conversations, and save lives. Because whatever you grow will save a bro. Learn more at Movember.com.
Welcome back to Talking Points on this beautiful fall evening. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi appeared to be hesitant to back Vice President Kamala Harris last week as President Biden's 2024 running mate. Take a listen.
Is Vice President Kamala Harris the best running mate for this president?
He thinks so, and that's what matters. And by the way,
think so?
She's very politically astute. I don't think people give her enough credit.
Do you think she is the best running mate, though?
She's the Vice President of the United States. So when people say to me, well, why isn't she doing this or that? I said, because she's the Vice President. That's the job description. You don't do that much.
Interesting quote there from Pelosi. Now, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries came to Harris's defense on Sunday, saying she has his full support. And this comes after new polling from CBS showing that likely Democratic voters are satisfied, but not entirely enthusiastic about the vice president.
Yeah, Chilean 30% of Democratic voters say they are enthusiastic with the Harris pick. That number was 28% higher when Harris was announced as Biden's pick in the 2020 election. So, Chile, what's changed?
You know, I don't know if I could say what's changed, but I think the interesting point here is that I think from the start, Democrats have had a hard time with this decision. You have somebody who was one of the first people to drop out in 2020, and now you're dealing with that same level of unpopularity. And now in a conversation where we're talking about President Biden here and whether he can run again in 2024, a lot of people making complaints about that, they're in an interesting quagmire.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting to break down these numbers here because you do see 54% still satisfied. And when you think about a VP pick, obviously the numbers are not as important as a presidential approval rating. And when you go back to 2020, talking about how Democrats weren't super excited about Harris to begin with, they were still in the we have to beat Trump mode. We have to be moderate Democrats and beat Trump. And I think that was what largely influenced the Harris pick in 2020.
It's a little bit of an interesting difference here, I think, ideologically. If you look at Pence and Trump in 2016, Trump was kind of the one who was coming new. He had a lot of new things and a lot of new things that people weren't talking about before. And Mike Pence, for all the evangelical Christians in the Republican Party, he was the kind of guy that calmed the fears and calmed everything out. I don't know if you can really bring a distinction between President Biden and Kamala Harris in terms of ideology. I think they're, for the most part, on the same wavelength. And I think in an era where Biden's struggling to attract progressives right now, I think that could also do him in as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Chile. And they are struggling because they do have that similar ideology. But again, bringing in Trump is a good point because when talking about Harris and Biden's, how much he appeals to people, you have to address who Trump will pick in the 2024 election.
Definitely. We'll save that conversation for another time. That's our program tonight. We thank you for tuning in. Follow us on X and Instagram at CitrusTV News. I'm Chilekasi, Adele.
And I'm Morel. Have a great night, Syracuse.